The Kansas City Chiefs have lost one of their coaching stars. What does that mean for this team going forward? Who's going? Who's staying? How do they adjust? This is going to be an interesting day for the rest of this offseason. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. This is Locked On Chiefs. We're happy to have you here. We're part of the podcast network of Locked On, covering your Kansas City Chiefs every single day. We appreciate you being here. There's a lot to go over. Making us your first listen certainly goes a long way. We appreciate that. Don't forget that we're available on all the platforms, including YouTube, and you can leave like, sub, and bells over there if you would. I'm your host, Ryan Tracy. You can follow me at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter, and I'm the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as RGR Football, and I'm the host of the Locked On NFL Draft Show as well. Man, we got a lot to talk about.
Somebody's a little busy over there. I'm Chris Clark. You can find me at Chris Clark NFL, or generally speaking, I'm actually tweeting from the Locked On Chiefs Twitter account. You can also now find me at Chiefs Corner. I am going to be covering Chiefs analytics, stats, and cap, and probably dive into some other stories that I want to tell. Specifically, the one I'm looking at right now is a deep dive into Patrick Mahomes and how he has started his four-year career.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Four-year starter, sorry.
Right. We're brought to you by Get Upside. Check that out. Use our code Touchdown. You can get yourself a lot of information, a little bit of cash back as well. The four-year starter is the basis, and he's had some help. What we found out on Thursday was that Mike Kafka is going to get hired away by the New York Giants. We had heard that he was a finalist before and weren't sure if that was going to happen, but the Chiefs will be losing the guy that's been in Patrick's corner through this process, and I think an underrated building block of Patrick's career to this point.
Yeah, he's also the passing game coordinator, so I think that that's also something to take into account as well. In a lot of ways, the passing game played huge parts this season in the success of the Kansas City Chiefs, so I do think that that's something to take a look at and wonder how that's going to change things going forward. And I do want to say really quick, I want to throw this out there. Go check out Chief in the North newsletter if you're curious about Patrick's last game against the Bengals, because there was a great breakdown of what exactly happened. And I mention that now because one of the things that they're going to have to look at for next season is how are they going to address when teams drop as many as they did into coverage. Because one of the things that stood out to me in that Bengals second half, and a lot of people have already started talking about it, they started dropping 8 against Patrick. And yes, he had success early in the game. He struggled late, but that's something they're going to have to get figured out, not only for the fact of how do you beat that, and I think Patrick already knows for the most part, but where does the passing game evolve to next year? And I think that's really what the question is going to be. And are you bringing in another piece that can kind of help take some of the pressure off of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill as well?
Yeah, and all that is boiled down to who's going to help Patrick evolve to that point. It should be the pass game coordinator. It should be the quarterback coach. Obviously, we'll talk about Eric Bieniemy here coming up later, but right now, we thought this was going to happen eventually. To have it happen now, which has been kind of a ramp-up process since that loss to Cincinnati, I think it puts a damper on what we had hoped to see happen, a more gradual replacement or another year with Kafka to support Patrick in working through this struggle in what he's seeing and what he's actually reacting to rather than what he should be reacting to. How big an impact is it to lose Mike Kafka in your mind?
I think it's huge. And just to be clear, because I know I've gotten a lot of questions on this already, and you have as well, they will not get any compensation. They only get compensation if they lose a minority coach to a head coaching job or a minority candidate to a GM job. It doesn't matter for offensive coordinators and such. Just want to throw that out there because I know people have been asking. I think it's huge that he loses them. I think that Kafka has been in his corner, and it's a guy that's helped bring him along. And I expect that that's going to be something that they're going to have to be trying to figure out, okay, who are they going to replace him with? Obviously, I'm sure they have ideas, but it's going to be a change going into next year. And I think, the bigger question is like I said, who are you going to replace him with? I mean, there's probably some internal candidates that they like, but at the same time, at this point, I also think that maybe you look outside the box. Maybe you're looking at a guy, a lot of people have asked about Alex Smith. I don't see him being ready for that position to begin with, or available wanting to come back into coaching this year. I think that might be something he might look at down the road, but I think he's enjoying ESPN. It's a big loss. I don't know how they're going to replace it. And the nice thing is they have Chad Henne, but they're going to have to bring him back for another year if they want to continue to have a veteran on the squad to support Patrick. And that's another question as well.
It is. And we'll talk about possible replacements for Kafka here coming up in the next segment. But the impact, I think, can't be understated because it's been a serious concession to always have him there. Somebody that can help him grow. Joe Blameyer might be on the list eventually as well. I know that he's put in a lot of work in terms of the film and what's given Patrick some of the ideas, but it has been really since the departure of Nagy has been Eric Bieniemy and Mike Kafka. And what we have to watch for is what does Patrick do to react to that? Does he take more on himself? Does he react more? We won't know until we start to see the offseason activities and see how he's going about determining some of that because you're going to see them practice against 2 and 3 high shells.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing that I think that they have to get it figured out quickly. And the reason I say that is because people think that the offseason, these players are going out on vacation. And I guarantee you some of them will. Patrick will take his time off. He'll decompress and he'll do what he needs to do to take care of his body. And there's nothing wrong with that. But he's going to be a film rat. That's just who he is as a person. And if you get a guy in there that can help him go through those steps and help him through that process, other than Andy Reid and other than Eric Bieniemy, somebody else that has a different perspective, doesn't have to be completely different, but just a little bit of a different perspective that can add another solid voice to Patrick and really help his maturation over the offseason.
Yeah, it's going to have to come. And I agree with you. Getting it done quickly to have that process begin. You have a decompression phase here for a week or two, and then it's back to the grind. So I agree. You have a window that this is going to happen. And actually, it's pretty general that after a loss, that's when you see the coaching staff plucked. I don't know that it's over. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. And starting next week, we're going to start the mock draft cycle. You'll see that from us. We're going to talk about some Senior Bowl prospects as well that are fits for this team as I come home from Mobile. But I want to make sure that you guys know Get Upside is the thing that you want to go get because it tracks all your gas purchases and allows you to make some money back. All you have to do is go to any app store and download the Get Upside app. Use our code TOUCHDOWN, and you'll be able to track your gasoline purchases, get some money back, and put that into your account. From there, all you have to do is pay yourself back in some way through Amazon account, through PayPal. You can even do like a gift card or straight to a bank account. It's free, and it's absolutely available to everyone that can get to an app store. That's Get Upside, and use our code TOUCHDOWN to make you sure that you start saving some money back. That's Get Upside is the name of the app, and the code is TOUCHDOWN. And then you still have some time to lay some bets on the Super Bowl, whether it's props or just the straight odds or the money line, whatever you want. The big game is coming up quickly. We will have coverage down at the Super Bowl from the whole Locked On team, so make sure you check that out as well. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores and podcasts and news and betting lines. You can even check out some of the March Madness stuff that is right around the corner as well. Pro and college hoops, it's always there. Don't miss out. Take advantage of what you can do with this amazing offer in 2022 now that we're off and rolling. All you got to do is go to BetOnline where the game starts. Now, replacing a guy like Kafka is tough. I think that for a coach like Andy Reid, trying to keep it internal is always the priority. But how do you feel about the offensive coaches still on this staff that are the possibilities?
I don't know that I really like any of the possibilities just because I don't know how much experience that they would be able to add to that room and be able to help. So I'm kind of thinking outside the box and thinking outside the program, and I'm actually wondering Matt Nagy. I mean, I almost hate going back there, but at the same time, he was here when Mahomes got drafted, and he's here when he's played the position. He knows what's going on, and he could step into this job. And I don't think he's going to be getting another offer somewhere else this year. I think he's going to, if he doesn't take this type of job, I think he's going to be taking the year off or maybe going and coaching in college. But if he wants to stay in the NFL, I think that he has the opportunity to do that in Kansas City and maybe come back as a QB coach. I think that would actually kind of maybe even help Patrick a little bit because it's a voice he already knows and respects. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I thought we'd get to this a little bit later, but I'm glad you got there because I think that's probably the easiest solution that makes everybody comfortable. I do not expect Matt Nagy to take a position in college. I don't think he's prepared for that or ready to do the recruiting aspect of that job.
I agree.
Think he's got enough on his plate coaching. So, yes, he could get an OC position somewhere, but right now I don't feel that that's trending in the direction.
I haven't even heard his name mentioned.
And that's the problem for him.
Yep.
But it's also a plus for him because he knows that he can walk in back onto this staff and be effective, be productive, and maybe get back to that perspective because he was here when Patrick was very young coming out and just starting. It might actually be able to jumpstart some of the progression that Patrick needs to return to in terms of still adapting to what he's seeing. The fit is there. Certainly, I would think that Andy Reid has the trust factor in him. The question becomes is, A, does Nagy hold out? And does he want to stay out and off the branch, so to speak, from the Andy Reid tree for now? And B, Reid has always been a guy that invests in youth at the coaching positions. And I'm not sure that he's ready to bring someone back in who's been outside the organization for a bit and try to reintegrate. I think it would be easy to do. I just don't know if it's what Andy Reid wants to do. How do you feel about what Reid's decision comes down to?
I think it has to come down to whether or not he feels like he has somebody on the roster or on the coaching staff that can take it over. And that's really the big key there is, do you have somebody that can step into that role and be successful? I mean, Kafka was an NFL quarterback. He may not have played much, but he was an NFL quarterback. And that goes a long way when you're starting to talk about that specific position. I mean, we've seen coaches coach other positions other than what they played in college or the NFL. But to me, QB is a position you don't really want to go outside the box on that much. You want to get a guy that knows a lot of QB play and a lot of QB fundamentals that's going to be able to work with your guy. And yes, Andy Reid is a QB guru, but having that extra voice in there and having somebody in there that's played the position can be looking at other things and let Reid do what he needs to do, which is coach the entire team.
Yeah, you're absolutely covering the bases there. I don't know that Joe Blamire is the guy that you want to bring up. Certainly an option, but he just made a transition. Greg Lewis, also a very experienced coach, just made a transition to another position. I think
that one wouldn't shock me.
That one, I think, is problematic because I think you have to let Greg Lewis continue down that path. I don't think you saw what you'd hoped to see from that group this year. And so then the question becomes to me, and I'm not sure how you feel about it. In fact, let me get yours first. Dave Girardi, he's the pass game analyst and assistant QB coach, would be the guy that works with Kafka the most closely. And it's a simple progression up the ladder, which Reid generally does in just climb a rung, bring in new guys at the bottom. They have Embry on staff as the offensive quality control coach. I would expect him to then step up and help Girardi as well. But given how little exposure we've had to Dave Girardi, how do you feel about that as an option?
I mean, maybe. I don't think it's a great option. I still think that and I will go back to what you said earlier about Greg Lewis, and I would argue that one of the reasons Greg Lewis switched positions is because he wants to be an offensive coordinator and potentially a head coach in the future. And to me, the positional coach that is going to lead to that the best is QB. And so that is the reason why it wouldn't shock me if Greg Lewis becomes a QB coach. I still don't know that I like it a lot because he's never played the position. Not saying he can't learn, but that move would not shock me.
Okay, that's fair. If you had to lay money down right now, even at BetOnline, folks, where would you put it?
I still think it's somebody outside the organization personally. Unless Andy Reid wants to go with a younger guy or give Greg Lewis an opportunity, I think it's got to be another person that's outside the organization, because I think that they don't have a guy really that you want to step in and work with Patrick. Because I think the other thing that is really telling in all of this is they specifically said, Brett Veach said in his interviews, in his post-season interviews, they're going to do what is best for Patrick. And to me, that means that they're going to look at everything that they have available, and they're going to say, okay, is there anywhere where we can go out and improve? Is there anybody we could go in that would be an improvement over what we already have? Now, obviously, they were going to be getting rid of Kafka if he wasn't getting this opportunity. But I do think that they may be looking outside the box and saying, okay, well, what else can we do to bring somebody in that's going to be able to help Patrick? Because they understand he is the face of this franchise, and in a lot of ways, he's the face of the NFL. And anything you can give him to improve is going to be a benefit.
Yeah. Folks, if you want to have a fun exercise, go look the Ravens staff, the Bills staff, the Washington staff, guys that are in the tree that come from Andy Reid. Maybe not direct descendant. Dable is now taking from the tree as well, but McDermott will have people on there that fit the bill as well. And if you're going to go outside the organization, my bet it would be that it comes from somebody that has already coached under Andy Reid in the past. So That's the place to look.
It wouldn't shock me at all. But while we're talking about how they're going to affect next year, and one of the things we haven't even talked about is how this affects Eric Bieniemy, which we'll talk about after this break. I want to tell you about our buddies over at Built Bar. And I know Ryan doesn't have his props because he's on the road, but that's okay.
I do have this.
Oh, look at you. Just having it right there. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. You need to go check out Built Bar if you have not already. They are absolutely fantastic, and you can make sure to include Built Bar in your plan for New Year's resolutions. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. You might think that this is just not worth it. Where's the chocolate? Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which is usually around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now, I kind of teased this before the break. This is the bigger question to me. Yeah, they need to figure out what they're going to do to replace Kafka, but what does this really mean for Eric Bieniemy?
It means that he has to adapt. He has to do something to incorporate a new coach that can work with him. This is the danger zone for me. Is right now you have Andy Reid who has concepts, override ability, but Eric Bieniemy is a guy that Patrick talks to in between plays. Whether he's calling from the play sheet or not, he is the person talking to Patrick the most during the ball game. And I think that's key because he then has to have support underneath him with the QB coach in particular. And so it has to be a working relationship that they can use as the foundation going forward. And that, I think, is what becomes tricky because we've seen Eric Bieniemy show his personality. He certainly is unique. A lot of questions around the league, whether it's that personality that is holding some things back in some of these interviews for other teams and other OC or head coaching positions. I don't know.
I'm glad you bring that up because Tyrann Mathieu actually talked about Bieniemy at the Pro Bowl. He said he is just flabbergasted as to why EB hasn't gotten a head coaching job. He said he's one of the most passionate and one of the most gifted speakers he's ever heard when it comes to talking to players. And that to me sounds like a coach that you want to be your head coach. So to me, this is a very troubling issue that he hasn't gotten an opportunity yet. But I also think it also says a lot about the coaching cycle in general, because you start looking at what this means. I understand Kafka is an offensive coordinator now. He's not a head coach. I get that. But he's going to be in the running for a head coach in the next couple of years. I would almost guarantee it, especially if New York does well.
I mean, there's Daniel Jones, let's be honest.
That's true. But, everybody's saying that Brian Dable's this offensive genius and Kafka is a good quarterback coach. The question is can he become a good offensive coordinator? If they're able to turn around that franchise, I think, Kafka's a guy that's going to be vaulted to the front of the head coaching tree, head coaching questions. And that's my big question is you get a guy going outside the organization like Kafka going to another team. Now, what's that mean for Eric Bieniemy is getting hired as a head coach? I think it also involves what they need to do for him and what they need to let him do. Reid needs to let him take more of the reins and give him the credit because I think that's the only way he gets an opportunity.
If it works. If it doesn't, and that's part of the problem what we've seen this year, which we won't know, then you can't let that happen. And unfortunately, that stalemates any progress that you have in that progression for Eric Bieniemy. I think, again, it needs to be supportive. You're going to see Kafka obviously be in a role with a head coach now that is an offensive coordinator, an offensive mind. So, it has to come back to the passing game coordination. And I know it's a coined term, but the coordination of the passing game is something that has to be supported for Eric Bieniemy to evolve and take a step forward and eventually get his shot. I'm baffled. I don't understand why it's happened yet. Rumors abound, whatever they are. It doesn't really matter. The fact is he's here. He's about to have a new person that he has to work hand in hand with to correct these things that we've seen go awry with the Chiefs passing game.
Yeah, and he also has to acknowledge, because I believe he's the running game coordinator. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe he is. That's his background is running backs coach. So I would imagine that's also his title. But he's also going to be taking on somebody that's going to be coming in as a passing game coordinator. You would imagine they're going to give that to the QB coach as well. And then you're in a situation where the Chiefs, throw the ball 66% of the time or more. I mean, so you're going to be dealing with somebody that is going to have a huge impact on your job in general. And I think it's got to be somebody that both of those guys can get along with. It's got to be somebody that can link together and be in a good situation with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. Don't think that's going to be a big problem. Everybody seems to love Andy Reid. Don't get me wrong, I love Eric Bieniemy, but he can be awfully fiery. So that's going to have to be something to take into account as well.
Yeah, and we're just going to have to see how it all falls out, because I think this one crept up on some people. I think the next one will as well. So we'll have to see how it goes. But we'll be back with you on Monday. We're going to start the mock draft series. We're going to start talking about prospects in particular as we start to watch film. Chris reviews the analytics and a lot of the new numbers. As we move forward and look for the evolution of this team, make sure you check out Locked On Bets, because they have a lot going for you. And we are going to have coverage for Super Bowl week. Make sure you hit that. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to get home from Mobile here in a little bit, and we will get back to normal and on to this offseason, looking at the 22 roster for this Kansas City Chiefs team. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too, and I'm looking forward to talking a lot more about where they can go going forward, because I think they have a lot of moves that they're going to have to make this offseason. QB coach is going to obviously be probably the forefront one, but they've got a lot of decisions they got to make across the roster and across personnel in general.
Folks, we're here 5 days a week, all offseason, all year round. Doesn't matter what day or week or year it is. We will be here. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Like, sub, and hit the bell on YouTube. Leave us an iTunes review. Let us know what you want to hear about, or if you have a prospect you're looking for. We appreciate your time today, and we'll talk to you next time.